Track 20. 1.
Back in the 1960s, this was a nice place to live. Everyone knew everyone and people looked out for each other. I'm sorry to say that since the 60s, the population has risen dramatically, and this has led to a breakdown in the community ties that used to unite us. Also, second homeowners buy holiday homes here, and that has meant that the price of property has escalated in recent years, forcing young people to move away from the area.
2.
My city is becoming more and more vibrant as time goes on. I love it. It used to be really dull, with nothing much for young people to do, but now bars and clubs have begun opening up. The city's no longer just for the older generations, with theaters and museums. It's got a new lease of life, with a great nightlife and an increasing student population to enjoy it.
3. A century ago, this town was a hive of activity, with its many factories and its port. Nowadays, however, it's nowhere near as bustling, as manufacturing has moved elsewhere. But I, for one, don't bewail the changes. There's a certain poignancy and beauty to the disused industrial architecture. And, in fact, many of the old factories are being converted into flats, and they're extremely popular with trendy young couples who are now moving into the town. Track 21.
Tell me about your hometown. In what ways has your town or city changed since you were a child? How could your town or city be improved? Are there any traffic problems where you live?
Sample answer.
Tell me about your hometown.
It's a biggish town in the south of the country with a population of about 150,000. When I was growing up, I always thought my hometown was all right, but now that I've travelled more widely, I know I wouldn't want to live there anymore.
In what ways has your town or city changed since you were a child?
Well, crime has been on the increase since the early 90s. My friends who still live there no longer feel that safe. Also, it has become very congested and traffic is a real problem. When I visit it now, it makes me quite sad thinking how things used to be.
How could your town or city be improved?
Well, the city where I live now is beautiful, and it's hard for me to think of any way in which it could be improved. I suppose if I had to find something, I'd say that it has mainly chain restaurants and shops, so we could do with a greater range of independent places. It would make eating out and shopping more enjoyable.
Are there any traffic problems where you live?
Yes, but I think there are traffic problems everywhere in this country, certainly in all the towns and cities. Here, public transport is really expensive, so everyone drives, and that means we have standstill traffic during the rush hour. They should increase the affordability of the buses.
Track 22. Sample answer.
A place that I enjoy visiting is Graz. It's the second largest city in Austria, with a population of around 300,000. It lies in the southeast of the country, in the state of Styria, which is a green, lush part of Austria. There is lots to do in Graz. It has several universities, so first and foremost, it's a fantastic place to be a student. It's buzzing with a good nightlife, good restaurants, and a lively cultural life. In fact, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and Europe's capital of culture a few years back. If you climb up to the hill overlooking the old town, you have an amazing view of the city. What strikes me most when I go up there is all the traditional pale buildings with their red roofs. And then right in the middle of it all, a remarkable piece of contemporary architecture, the Museum of Modern Art. It looks like a huge sea cucumber, completely out of keeping with all the architecture around it, but of course totally in keeping with what it houses, modern art. I always think how brave it was of the Austrians to put it there, in the heart of the city, and how unlikely it was that that sort of thing would ever be allowed where I live. I really admire them for it, and I think the building has its own kind of beauty. The last time I went to Graz, they were having a wine festival. People were tasting all kinds of wines from stalls on the street, very informally, and chatting with friends while they drank. It was wonderful. How has it changed since I first visited it? Well, I would say it has undoubtedly become more trendy. Like I say, they have built a stunning new museum. They have also built an island in the river, which is actually a floating platform holding a cafe and a playground. To go with the sea cucumber theme, this one is shaped like a seashell. I would say the local inhabitants have become more overtly proud of their city too. It has received quite a bit of recognition in recent times, which has really placed Graz well and truly on the cultural map, something the inhabitants are always happy to talk to you about. In fact, that is something else I enjoy about going there. The local people are invariably friendly and helpful.
When did you last go to Graz?
I last went there the year before last. I wish I could go more often, but unfortunately work commitments mean I can't.
Track 23. Leicester, Newcastle, Reading, Greenwich, Plymouth, Cambridge. Track 24. 1. Island. 2. Calm. 3. Camera. 4. Half. 5. Interesting. 6. Vineyard. 7. Walk. 8. Wednesday. 9. Foreigner. 10. Restaurant. Track 25. Home.
Is it only children who experience homesickness? Do you think it's better for children to grow up in the city or the country? Why do some people retire to the countryside?
Patriotism.
Are people from your country patriotic? Why do people often feel proud of where they come from? Does intense patriotism have any disadvantages?
Sample answer.
Is it only children who experience homesickness?
Children probably feel homesickness more acutely because they may never have been away from home before, and because they are still closely attached to their parents. They cannot appreciate the cultural insights of a new place, or the time off work, the way an adult can. And they are generally less flexible when it comes to coping with unfamiliar food and so on. However, many adults also experience culture shock when they visit a new place, which, I suppose, can be considered a kind of adult homesickness. We find a place strange and even slightly disturbing, and this is because it is different to what we are used to. So, in a sense, we miss our familiar surroundings and are indeed homesick.
Do you think it's better for children to grow up in the city or the country?
I think the perfect solution is to live in the countryside, close to a major cultural centre, by which I mean a big city. This means that the child can enjoy all the pleasures of country life, the farm animals, the fresh air, the relative safety, whilst at the same time not being too far from all the fun that can be had in the city, musicals, kids' museums, zoos. Kids need to be exposed to a wide range of situations and settings, and experiencing just the city or just the countryside is limiting.
Why do some people retire to the countryside?
I suppose they crave the peace and quiet after a lifetime of hard work in the hustle and bustle of the city. In fact, in the modern imagination, I think the city is associated with work and the country with relaxation. Of course, people like farmers do work in the countryside, so it's not an altogether accurate picture, but nevertheless, it is how the two opposing settings are often regarded.
Are people from your country patriotic?
On the whole, I would say yes, they are. I think most people in the world are patriotic. You can see this at the Olympics, where thousands of people go to support their country's sportspeople and millions, if not billions more, watch from the comfort of their own homes, cheering their countrymen on and willing them to win. It's a very powerful force, patriotism, and has been responsible for much good and bad. But I think the Olympics shows us the best and most inclusive side of patriotism.
Why do people often feel proud of where they come from?
People feel the need to belong to a club, to a family, to a group of friends, to a region, and to a country. Where you come from is tied up with so many other things that it says an awful lot about you, and so is of the utmost importance in defining who you are. For example, it affects what you eat, what language you speak, and how you behave towards others. Being proud of where you are from is therefore an extension of being proud of who you are.
Does intense patriotism have any disadvantages?
Oh, undoubtedly. The flip side of patriotism is xenophobia, people disliking others who are from another country and associating all kinds of negative characteristics with them. People are capable of believing that everyone from that country over there is mean, rude, dirty, etc. It's quite frightening, really, because it could be argued that xenophobia has made it easier for governments to justify going to war with other nations over the centuries.
Track 26. 1. Patriotism is a terrible thing. Well, let me rephrase that. Patriotism is not always a force for good. 2. Patriotism is a terrible thing. Or, more accurately, patriotism is not always a force for good. Track 27. 1. My house is too small. What I mean is that it is too small for our family, because there are so many of us. For an average-sized family, it would do very well. 2. My house is too small, or, to put it another way, it is too small for our family, because there are so many of us. For an average-sized family, it would do very well. Track 28. People from my village are suspicious of foreigners. In other words, they're xenophobic. Track 29. People in the past were not so mobile. My grandparents, for example, lived all their lives in the town where they were born. People in my country like foreign cuisine. Korean restaurants are very popular, for instance, as are Chinese restaurants.